Call the November 12th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. We started downstairs about 4:30 with the impact fee workshop. We had roll call that time, but since we got some different people in this meeting, let's do roll call again, just for business purposes, please.
Carrie? Here. Walton?
Here.
Kimball? Sorry, Stephenson?
Here.
Wilhelm?
Here.
Schreiber?
Here.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is ceremonies, announcements, appointments, presentations, and we do have one action item there.
Yeah, we're doing the swearing in of Chris Schreiber, new to the P&Z Commission.
Just read it here.
Yep.
Is he standing thing? Okay. Do you, Chris Schreiber, a planning commission appointee of the city of Post Falls, do solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully perform the duties of your appointed office and will support and honor to the best of your ability the constitutions of the United States and the state of Idaho and all applicable laws, ordinances, and policies of the state of Idaho and the city of Post Falls, as well as the policies, procedures, code of ethics of the Post Falls Planning Commission? Do you hereby, through this oath, affirm that you will perform the duties of this public trust in a fair, equitable, and ethical manner befitting the dignity and responsibility of the office?
I will.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you both. And welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's official.
Any amendments to the agenda, Mr. Manley?
There's none.
Any declaration of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visit from commission members?
Nope.
None. Next item is the consent calendar, please.
Yeah, the first item is action item A, the meeting minutes from October 24th, 2024. Item B is the Gabrio Estates duplex zoning recommendation. File number is ZC242.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody like to make a motion on that, please?
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, I have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Roll call, please.
Carrie?
Yes.
Walton?
Yep.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Because I wasn't here, I would have abstained from that one.
That'll work. Next item is citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda tonight. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Do we have anybody wishing to speak on an item that's not on the agenda tonight? Yes, sir. Come on up. That would be for the public hearings. Did you want to speak on something?
I want to speak on the landmark subdivision.
Okay, so that'll be a little bit later.
Okay.
So you're good for right now. Yeah, you can turn that in.
I was having a hard time hearing you because I didn't know if I wanted to speak.
Oh. Cool. All right. Seeing none. Any unfinished or old business?
There's none.
Okay. Now we'll get into the public hearings. So if you want to speak during the public hearings, there are forms in the back. Fill those out. Bring those up to Nancy up front here. And then at that point in the hearing, we'll call up everybody during whichever hearing it is, and you'll have your time to speak. First hearing tonight is Westfork Townhomes Subdivision. And we'll open that hearing. Ethan to present.
Evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, presenting the Westfork Townhome subdivision for staff side. File number is SUBD-24-6. And so the owner of the property is Robert King. The applicant tonight is, the applicant for the project is Lake City Engineering Incorporated, here to represent. They are requesting approval of the proposed subdivision on approximately 0.44 acres to make a total of 6 townhome lots. So location of the site is there hatched in red. It's east of Spokane Street, north of Mullen. And so you can kind of see that there. It's just right off of Spokane Street. There, just inset on the end of that block. So that's Spokane and, along Mullen there on the north, you can see there too, just to the east, there's some other subdivision there that also was approved in the past too. That was kind of for townhomes, not developed, but it is theirs currently, just to point that out as a reference. Looking at the surrounding zoning for this area, we can see that it's within the limited commercial zone, and within that limited commercial zone, per our land use table, it is a permitted use outright for 6 units per structure. So you have the red as well, just south of Mullen, just across the street from the subject site. That's going to be community commercial services. The orange is going to be your high density, and then your kind of mustard yellow is going to be medium density, and that yellow is going to be single family. So, and the purple there is Smart Code 5. So, just to give you some context of the surrounding zoning, we look at the site, and it's currently a vacant parcel. It's over the Rafter and Perry Aquifer, and City of Post Falls is going to be the wastewater provider. The requested zoning is in conformance with the land use assumptions within the city's water reclamation master plan as stated in the staff report. And also within the staff report, it is stated that staff has commented there is capacity and the willingness to provide service for the property at the requested density. So the water also, City of Post Falls and that area, and the traffic for this location per Exhibit A3, it is consistent with the city's transportation master plan. And then just kind of to indicate, Frederick Street is classified as a minor arterial, and then Bogey Drive is classified as a local roadway. So kind of gives you some classification for the street network there. Looking a little bit more at the future land use designation, just the focus area, we have business commercial. You can see on the map to the left there, all that pink is going to be your business commercial. And so within that focus area, or excuse me, future land use designation, it does talk about the residential as well as commercial uses in that future land use designation. And then it is within the Southeast Central Focus Area, which does encourage higher density residential uses in the area, boosting support for retail and commercial uses as well. So that just gives you a little bit of context. And then right now we're going to go through the subdivision review criteria. Here you can see the proposed subdivision plan, kind of what's laid out that they're proposing. There's a 6 lots right at the Mullen and Frederick Street intersection on the northwest corner. And they give that project matrix there as well, just kind of some of the density there at 13.6 dwelling units per acre, number of lots is 6, and the total acreage is 0.44 acres. So the first review criteria, we'll look at that water provision, making sure there's definite provisions for that, and that it's adequate in terms of quantity and quality for the type of subdivision proposed. So as I mentioned before, staff has commented in the staff report that the water is available. It does have the capacity and willingness to serve the site from the City of Post Falls. And looking at review criteria 2, we do look at the sewage system, the public sewage system, making sure that it can be accommodated by the sewer flows based on the proposal. And again, you can find this in the staff report as well, but the city does have the capacity and willingness to serve as proposed per the applicant's Exhibit A3. Review criteria 3 looks at the streets, making sure they're consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. The subdivision should not have any negative impact on local transportation system in alliance with the transportation master plan as stated in the staff report. And I'll go through a little bit more slides here to kind of give some further information. But here you can see some transportation context. You have your roadways there, the Hatch site there. There's a CityLink bus stop just to the northwest along Spokane Street there. And then you can see the Mullen minor arterial there in the green, the lighter green. And then Spokane Street being your kind of higher classified roadway there in the darker green. So as mentioned before, that's kind of gives you the context, at least visually, on the street network and where that CityLink bus stop is. Here's the roadway sections that are proposed through the applicant's submittal. And so this is going to be the Mullen Avenue typical section there that you can see. And the next slide I'll go into as well, the Frederick Street, typical roadway section there as well. This just gives a little bit more context of kind of what to expect. As this develops on that corner, they're going to be improving, if approved, 2 frontages, Frederick and Mullen Avenue. So these typical sections, in the city standards would apply. Looking at review criteria 4, looks at the proposed subdivision, making sure that the topographical, the soil conditions, they aren't presenting any hazards or have negative effects identified on the site, and making sure they're compatible with such conditions. So the site is located, as I mentioned, over the Rafter and Perry Aquifer. There are no known soil or topographical conditions that have been identified to staff at this point in time or brought up by anything during the noticing period. Looking at review criteria 5, we look at the area proposed for subdivision is zoned for the proposed use and conforms to the other requirements found in city code. So it does meet the requirements of Title 17 and Title 18 of city code, and this kind of gives you a snapshot of our land use table. You can see the land use category as limited commercials, what they're in, and the townhome, 6 or less units per structure, is permitted outright. There's a P there. Sorry, it's a little dark. But the lot widths as proposed are all 18 feet or above, which is their minimum lot size, or lot width, that they can have. And then the lots all range between 3,000 and about just under 4,200 square feet. So the 2,000 square foot is a minimum for the lot size, so they are meeting that criteria and that subdivision code as well. And then review criteria 6 looks at making sure the community will bear no more than its fair share of cost to provide services through fees and furnishing land and other mitigation measures with off-site impacts. So this is usually done, and we do collect impact fees and cap fees for this. So those are assessed and collected at the individual building permits when they're pooled. And so that does assist in mitigating the off-site impacts to parks, public safety, streets, multimodal, EMS, and fire. So at the time of building permit issuance, they will be paying all those fees to help mitigate those off-site impacts. We do a notice jurisdiction to make sure that we have other comments if there's any conflicts or issues come up. And so on this list, we notified all these agencies, and then of these agencies, we received back 6 comments from them. The Post Falls School District, they do remain neutral. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, they'll review and comment during the permitting process. And Yellowstone Pipeline Company had no comments. Post Falls Police Department remained neutral. And then Department of Environmental Quality had no comments, as well as Post Falls Highway District. So nothing outstanding or to note there that causes any alarms. So this is the subdivision review criteria we just went through. And with that being said, I will stand for questions you have for staff, if any.
Any questions for staff?
No?
Just a couple. When it comes to transportation and how this fits into the transportation plan, you mentioned Bogey Drive. Where's Bogey Drive?
If I said Bogey Drive, I did not mean Bogey
Okay.
Drive.
That's fine.
It was,
I
yeah,
think
it's
it was
along
Frederick.
Frederick and
Okay.
Mullen,
Mullen,
correct.
yeah.
Yep.
And then if these are going to be rear loading units, because I saw on there that they won't have access via Mullen or Frederick,
Correct.
the developer's
an-
going to be required to essentially pave the alleyway?
Correct. If not already paved, that will be their main access that'll need to be improved prior to, or with the subdivision, excuse me.
Would they be required to go just across the back of their property, or would they be required to go all the way to Spokane Street?
I believe it's the whole alleyway, the extent of their property on that alleyway. So from Frederick Street all the way out to the lot 1 there, at the end of it, to the west.
Okay. And then on the way that the sidewalks, the improvements were laid out on that quick sketch, is it normal for the sidewalk to be partially in the right-of-way and partially on private property? Is that normally how it's kind of broken down?
Sometimes in the city that does happen. There is just kind of the matter of how much right-of-way, if any, is needed. I don't believe there's any in this situation that's going to be dedicated. So typically it's done within the property, within the easement for the 15-foot sidewalk utility drainage easement.
Because here they show along Mullen, half of the sidewalk is in the right-of-way, and half is on private property. But then it's different on Frederick,
And
where
that,
most of it's on the right-of-way, some of it's on private.
Correct.
Is there some reason, is that like due to the arterials differences or something? Or?
I believe it is road classification based, but I'll let City Engineer Rob Paulus explain that.
Good evening, Commission. Robert Paulus, City Engineer. So on Mullen Avenue is classified as a minor arterial roadway. Typically, in most of the city, a minor arterial roadway is about 110 feet of right-of-way. In this older developed portion of Mullen Avenue, we can't get that in there without having to tear out buildings for an entire stretch. If you go down by Walmart, down there, we don't even have 110 feet of right-of-way either. We've squeezed a 5-lane road into as small of an area as we can. Along here, it is not atypical, though it's not our standard practice, that we can fit the sidewalk along Mullen Avenue, part of it in the right-of-way, part of it in the sidewalk drainage and utility easement that we get on the private property.
Okay.
In this case, they're showing that they're proposing a 10-foot utility easement. That will actually be a sidewalk drainage and utility easement on the face of the plat.
Okay.
On Frederick Street, we have, with the older platting in that area, we have sufficient rights of way. We don't have the utility sidewalk and drainage easement in that area, but they will be dedicating that with this plat, and we are able to fit the sidewalk fully within the right-of-way, which is our preferred option.
Okay. In terms of utilities, I think one of their plans, it shows that they're going to have one water meter per lot and one sewer connection per lot. Is that standard for
That is
townhouse?
standard as well, yes.
Okay. And once if this is approved, what is in place to require it to be townhomes? I mean, is that something that's recorded on the plat that says this is approved for townhomes, it's not approved for single family, or? Because once those lots are created.
Once those lots are created, the zoning underneath it, that falls back into planning as far as how that is maintained, and I'd turn that back over to Mr. Ethan.
Yeah, typically, in their process through application and pre-subdivision meetings, we make sure that when they create the lots and propose it, they're going to meet the underlying zoning district for whatever they're going to be building. So this, in case townhomes, that Title 17, Title 18 review criteria, making sure it conforms to local or the land use in our code. We look at that and screen and make sure that this actually lines up, which if they subdivide this, there's really only a few things you can really build on it once it's subdivided like this, and townhomes being one of them.
Okay.
So they kind of lock themselves into that use, essentially.
But it could be like twin homes if they wanted.
It couldn't be twin home because that's not supported through, that type of product is not supported in this zoning.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Any other questions? All righty. Invite the applicant up.
It's easier to look at that one, yeah, 'cause
Super sensitive. Good evening, Chairman Stephenson, fellow commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the city of Coeur d'Alene, for the record. Chairman Schreiber, congratulations. Look forward to working with you a bunch. It's nice to see some fresh faces up here. So, here tonight representing Bob King, Robert King on this subdivision request. As you can see, Mullen Avenue and Frederick Street, they're highlighted, outlined in black, just off of Spokane Street. It's about a 0.44 acre piece of property. We're proposing 6 lots. It's zoned limited commercial. That's that mauve pink color that you see there. Ethan kind of went through all of the zoning stuff, so I'm not going to labor on that too much. He also went through the subdivision review criteria, so I'm not going to go through that tonight unless there's additional questions on that, but I think he did a great job. It's covered in your staff report on that, so if you have questions, feel free to ask me about that, but I'm not going to go through those. We feel, as does staff, that we meet all of those review criteria. So what we're proposing is 6 townhouse lots, as you can see here. So you've got Frederick Street, very sensitive mouse. Frederick Street here, Mullen on the south, 6 townhome lots. We've got sewer in Mullen Avenue, so sewer will be served from the south. We've got water in the alley. Water will come in from the alley. The primary access, as was discussed earlier, will be from the alley. None of these lots will front Mullen Avenue. They'll all access off of the alley. It's in conformance with the limited commercial zoning. Townhouse construction is. Sewer and water are both provided by the city of Post Falls. Lot sizes do meet the minimum size criteria for the zoning. So we feel it's a pretty straightforward request tonight, and we'd ask for your approval. So any questions for me?
Any questions?
Thank
Alrighty.
you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
Any public testimony? None? All right. No need for rebuttal then? No? Okay. We'll close out the hearing and go through the review criteria.
Good evening, Commissioners. What's before you today is Westfork Subdivision 24-6 subdivision approval of 0.44 acre lot into 6 townhomes in limited commercial. Review criteria number 1. Has definite provision been made for a water supply system that is adequate in terms of quantity, quality for the type of subdivision proposed?
Yes, the Post Falls City Water has said it's adequate where they are.
Thank you, Commissioners. And number 2 as well, adequate provisions for a public sewage system which can accommodate the proposed sewer flows.
Yeah, the city will handle that also. It's just right off Mullen.
Thank you. Number 3, criteria is are the proposed streets consistent with the transportation elements of the comprehensive plan?
Yes, it's consistent with the city's transportation master plan.
Thank you. Number 4, any areas of the proposed subdivision which involve soil or topographical conditions, hazardous ones have been identified. I'll just take this one for you folks. There was no testimony to the contrary, being a developed part of the city.
Yep.
So that one would not be applicable. Let's go to number 5. The area for the proposed subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, and the use conforms to other requirements found in the code.
Yep.
It's permitted in the.
Yeah,
current
townhomes
zone.
are permitted outright, and, as long as it's 6 or less townhomes.
They are permitted in the limited commercial zone.
Yep.
And there was no testimony that it would not meet any of the size or dimensional criteria to the adverse. Okay. And finally, number 6, has the developer made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs by providing impact fees?
Yeah, the developer will be paying impact fees.
Yeah, and as the staff report noted, those would be imposed at the time of development. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Commission members, how would you like to act on this one?
I'll make a motion.
You can make a motion.
I move to approve Westfork Townhomes file number SUBD-24-6, finding that it meets the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code 17.12.060H, as outlined in our deliberations, subject to conditions in the subdivision conditions that staff report put page 4 and 5, numbers 1 through 8, and direct staff to prepare a written reasoned decision.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor
I'll second.
and a second. Roll call, please.
Carrie?
Did you say Carrie?
Carrie.
I'm sorry, yes.
Walton?
Yes.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
All right, moving on. Next hearing is Title 18 Text Amendment, Police Access. Open up that hearing.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls. presenting this Title 18 text amendment, file number TA 24-2. The Planning Division is the applicant. This proposed code was coordinated with our legal department and the police over concerns for access for some multifamily. You can see here, we're requesting you to look here to add that section 182420 subsection Q in our Post Falls Municipal Code entitled Post Falls Police Access Exigent Circumstances. So here's really what it says here in the nutshell. This whole thing is going to would be added to that general standard section in Post Falls Municipal Code. Here you see an underlined key issue there is that it allows the chief of police authorized to require the owner or developer to install and maintain a keyless entry system suitable or suitably alternative to provide police access to the common areas and corridors. How this would be applied for is when an apartment project came before us, we would go through the site plan review process, route it for comments from the police department and get comments, and then include that in that aspect. And then we would record that documentation. You can kind of see there in red that there's an alternative that could be made. There in italicized, there's a definition of what qualifies for the exigent circumstances. Pretty much it. We routed it, we got comments. We only received comments from the highway district. They didn't really have any concerns. We didn't receive anything from the police, but I'm assuming since they coordinated with legal that they're in favor of the proposal. So any questions for staff on this?
A couple questions.
Yeah.
So commissioners, let me.
No, is this new?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit more background. So the chief of police approached me a little while back and asked for this code amendment. This basically mirrors what is provided for under the fire code right now. So the fire code is controlled by the state, but the fire marshal can require these sort of keyless entry systems you sometimes see, like a lockbox at the front. So for fire access, like you have those common areas in apartment complexes that you can't get to because they're locked exterior. So the police had asked us to look at this and vet it and make sure we were, in compliance with any search and seizure requirements and everything else. So under those exigent circumstances, we wanted to be able to provide the police the same type of access that fire officials have, because oftentimes they're the first responders to emergencies or anything else, or needing to deal with some of those life-threatening situations. The reason this is before you folks tonight is because this is an amendment to your zoning code, because of the way the city code is set up. And normally you wouldn't be considering vanilla or regular ordinances, but because this is an amendment to the zoning code by the state statutes, it first comes to you for evaluation and a public hearing and a recommendation, and then it goes to city council for an action. So that's a little bit more background, and maybe that'll address some of your questions.
Thank you.
I don't know if people heard, but if they can hear this, Mike, for people in the audience, this code section is, I'll just do a quick nutshell of what you said. Basically, you're just asking for this, how the fire department has access to sites, the same rights for police, so they'll have the same similar akin to them. And then we'll be looking at this. Normally, we'd be forwarding a recommendation to city council for city council to formally adopt, but we're looking for a recommendation.
Okay. Did I answer your questions, Chris?
No.
Or, no? Well, then shoot. Go ahead.
Okay, so under general standards, where access to or within a structure. So are we, the way I read that, that's the entire structure.
Well, there's some apartment complexes that have exterior security doors. They're not necessarily like a 3-story walk-up where you have open hallways. They may have closed hallways. And so currently the fire department would have access to those. What the police would like is have access to. So if there's anything going on internal to the building, they have access inside the building. And because of the code section, that'll allow them to make that request.
But that first sentence doesn't say to the common area. It's just to the structure. So I was just a little concerned that.
It's to or within a structure. So like the hallway, so they can get into each individual unit within. Like if you have a 24-unit apartment complex and they have no exterior doors to each individual unit, All they have is exterior security code doors. Well, how's the police gonna get to this building? If they don't have a code to get into the internal hallway, they can't get into.
Well, I would
it's
agree
just-
that they need to get access to the interior hallway, but what if those units weren't separately locked or something? This, to me, sounds like you have to provide a key to the chief of police to every door in the building.
And that's not, this language mirrors the IFC language for the fire code.
Okay.
So this is identical. We didn't invent the wheel here. That is the same language in the International Fire Code for those lock boxes. The only added part is the exigent circumstances that we've included.
Okay.
So it also allows access to the gated communities, which is something I expanded upon because they weren't clear.
Yep.
And this is also language that has been adopted, I think, by the city of Nampa down in Boise area as well. So we have vetted it. It's not intended to provide access to individual apartments. That's never going to happen.
So is there some reason why you would need a Knox box for the fire department and then right next to that a Knox box for the police department? Why wouldn't they just use the same access box?
Yeah, and my understanding of that, Commissioner, is because of the restrictions under the fire code, they're not allowed to share
Okay.
keys for it. So it seems like the modern trend is to have a code anyway, coded entry system rather than a knock box with an actual physical key in it. Sometimes the police would coordinate with the fire marshal. He would be able to run a key out or anything else. But this is really to give more ability at the front end to make sure those circumstances are provided for. So it's not trying to duplicate the system. If there can be a duplication, then great. Obviously, that's a cost savings or anything else, not to necessarily have separate systems, but allow the police to have similar access.
Okay. But, my one concern with the word keyless is that those fail all the time.
Well, right. And that's always going to be an issue, regardless. If somebody loses a key, they open the Knox box or anything else and lose the key. I mean, there's always things you can't plan for, but at least this gives us a seat at the door on the front end to have them coordinate with the chief of police, and he's empowered to make those judgment calls at that stage.
Okay.
So,
I think that's it.
Vicky Joe?
So would this retrofit to past units and then also any new construction?
We would apply this to I'll let the legal, but how planning we would look at new construction and apply it going forward for
okay.
site plans.
yeah, and the intent is not to go backwards. I mean, if there's a substantial remodel or new building permits are pulled, that could trigger to that stage if there's a remodel or a tear down and everything else.
Okay.
I don't think the intent is to move backwards.
Any other questions? Okay. Any public testimony on this one? All right.
And no special slides to go through for criteria either.
No criteria. Close this out. So basically, you just need a motion either recommending or not recommending this text amendment to City Council.
Yeah, and at this stage, again, we've closed a public hearing. That's kind of the first tick in amending the zoning code. If there was suggested amendments to this language, which is before you folks, we could take those, redline it through, and bring it towards council. But the motion I'm looking for is to move it forward to City Council for consideration.
Anybody like to make that motion?
So is it recommending approval or just
Recommending approval of the
To be
proposed
forwarded.
code amendment.
Okay. Then I will recommend approval of Title 18 Amendment, Police Access File Number TA-24-2, to be forwarded to the City Council for adoption, approval.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor
Second.
and a second. Roll call, please.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Walton?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to City Council. Final hearing of the night is Landmark Place Subdivision, file number SUBD 2024-3. And Anna to present.
Good evening, Commissioners. Anna Stahl, one of the planners here with the city. I'm going to be presenting the staff report for the Landmark Place subdivision. The applicant is Ace Solutions, and the property owner is the Rose of Sharon Enterprises Incorporated. They're requesting approval of a subdivision of approximately 11.15 acres into 55 single-family residential lots at 4.9 units per acre. The parcel is currently a vacant, undeveloped land, and it's over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The water provider is the City of Post Falls, and wastewater would also be City of Post Falls. The property is located just north of the Centennial Trail and south of Interstate 90. To the north is the Department of Transportation land, Idaho Department of Transportation. To the east is Smart Code 3 property, which is currently used as a city park, and residential mobile home park land. That's that brown zone, and that's currently used for residential mobile homes. To the south and west is property within Kootenai County, zoned ag suburban with residential single-family uses, and the project itself is zoned residential 1. Moving into the review criteria, here you can see the proposed layout. All of the lots are over 6,500 square feet, which is the minimum for the residential 1 zoning designation. This is the other half of the proposed layout on the east side. Review criteria 1, has definite provision been made for the water supply system? The City of Post Falls does have capacity to provide water service to the subdivision, and the design of the water main extension will be coordinated with the city to limit any conflicts with the existing utilities. Review criteria 2, adequate provisions have been made for public sewage system, and the existing municipal system can accommodate proposed flows with the subdivision. The City of Post Falls does have capacity to provide sewer service to the subdivision as it's proposed, and sanitary sewer for the site was previously constructed but wasn't used, and they'll be making sure to test it with as new services are constructed. Here you can see a layout of the existing and proposed sewer and water services for the area. If you have further questions on this slide, you can direct them to the city engineer. Review criteria 3, are proposed streets consistent with the transportation plan element of the comprehensive plan? And staff has commented that they are consistent per the proposed layout, which is Exhibit A3 in the staff report. Review criteria 4, all areas of the proposed subdivision which may involve soil or topographical conditions presenting hazards have been identified, and the use is compatible with any of those conditions. The property is located over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, and no hazards have been identified either by staff or through the comment period. Review criteria 5, the area proposed for the subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, and the use conforms to other requirements found in this code. As I mentioned before, it is residential single-family 1, or single-family residential 1. And the proposed lots range from 6,507 square feet to 8,453, which are all over the minimum 6,500 for the zone, and they would all be required to meet the minimum lot width of 60 feet. Here you can see the minimum lot area and minimum lot width requirements for the R1 zone that I just went over in the last slide. Moving on to review criteria 6, the developer has adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs to provide services. And this will be done through the collection of impact fees at the time of development. Each building permit will be assessed impact fees for parks, fire, EMS, public safety, multimodal pathways, and streets. Multiple jurisdictions were noticed of this subdivision application. We received comments from 6 of them. The comments primarily were that they were neutral or reserving comments for the review process when permits are pulled. We did get a comment from the Idaho Transportation Department indicating that they do plan to expand Interstate 90 at this location, but they don't currently have funds for that. And we received a comment from the Post Falls Highway District indicating that any access to Lundy Boulevard would require an approach or access permit through the Post Falls Highway District. These are the 6 review criteria that I've just gone through, and with that, I will stand for any questions.
Is Lundy the road that goes down the middle?
No.
Oh, to the
Or-
south. The road that goes down the middle is going to be a private roadway that has
Okay.
yet to be named. I can go back to the layout if that's helpful. So here you can see this is the eastern portion of the subdivision. Lundy is gonna be this existing
Okay, I see
roadway
it
right
now.
here.
Oh, my slide loaded up on my computer. All right, so two in and 2 out. Okay, gotcha.
The
Okay.
city of Post Falls owns that land that's south, that portion, yes.
Right
That's-
there?
That's, yep,
No, not that portion.
yep. City of Post Falls owns that piece of land, that portion. Or, you don't think so yet?
It's under Rose of Sharon, and it's included in this application.
I don't think they own it yet.
City owns that lot up to the north.
Commissioners, Robert Paul, city engineer. So the portion of that private roadway that's shown in what is, if you looked on the GIS right now, is a private tract. The city of Post Falls has negotiated the purchase of that property and in exchange is providing an easement back to the Rose of Sharon so that they can extend that private road across that portion. What ended up happening was the city of Post Falls already has a sewer line and a force main going through that property, which makes it very difficult to redevelop. The city of Post Falls also has the need to extend a future portion of the outfall pipe from the wastewater treatment plant through that land. So it made more sense for the city of Post Falls to purchase that property to accommodate our utility needs and then provide an easement back to the property. It may not be shown correctly on the GIS or the assessor parcel information at this time, but that is what has been negotiated with the property owner.
More
Hey.
questions?
Yeah, more questions?
I've got a lot.
I got a lot. Is that what you said?
Hmm?
Go.
Go
So,
ahead.
this, excuse my ignorance, because this is my first commission meeting, but I have a lot of questions in regards to, so for one thing, that west half of Lot 15 is not in the city limit. So how does the city own that parcel? And how do we look at a subdivision application that's dependent on something that's outside the city limits?
So the city of Post Falls owns that parcel, so we have an ability to grant an easement to someone else to utilize it for a specific purpose. There is the requirement, and that's where you fall into where the Post Falls Highway District got involved, in that the access of that private road onto Lundy Boulevard needs an approach easement or agreement with the Post Falls Highway District. The Post Falls Highway District did take this up in their meeting last month, and they said that they would allow for that access point. They just need to get the access permit to complete that.
So we've legally changed the city boundary since this application went
No,
in?
we've got other portions of property that the city owns, which are not in the city of Post Falls.
Okay.
There, for sure.
And that's.
It's just not your typical thing that you see. I would not be surprised if at some point, it's like the Centennial Trail in this area is under Kootenai County's ownership and also under their management for maintenance. The city of Post Falls owns the Centennial Trail just to the east of here. So the applicant, and they can go into
further detail on this, they worked out an easement agreement with Kootenai County to allow for the private roadway to cross the Centennial Trail. City of Post Falls was involved in those negotiations as far as the design elements necessary to safely get a road across the trail and to make the roadway a lower priority than the Centennial Trail itself.
Okay.
And then the subdivision itself it's the land north of Centennial Trail. So everything south of the northern limits of the Centennial Trail, that's up there to graphically depict how the exit route could go from the west to the east to Lundy.
Okay.
But then the easements in place that Rob just talked about kind of helps further explain that.
Okay. And when we're talking about the acreage of this site, the 11 acres doesn't include Lot 15. Is that right? Because there's at least four different
The city parcel
acreages.
is not considered as part of the acreage of the subdivision.
Okay. So the subdivision itself is 11.15 acres.
Yes, and that's everything north of the Centennial Trail.
And this is just me being particular. That's different from the applicant's measurements. So there's three different references, 11.482, 11.55, and 10.993 for the acreages. So I just wasn't sure which one we should use when we're, I mean, it's a nominal difference, but we're trying to figure this out here.
I would recommend that that should be a question for the applicant to explain why they have three different aggregate areas on that.
When we approve a subdivision like this, or we consider a subdivision like this, when an applicant comes to the city, my understanding is that their plan has to include everything that's in Table 1, that's in our code. Is that correct?
Table 1 of Title 17? What Table 1 are you referring to?
Table 1 in our subdivision ordinance.
Okay, that'd be Title 17.
So all those things should be on this plat. Is that correct, or?
That's pretty much correct. The city engineer is allowed some latitude in some of the items not being on there. It was noted in the engineering staff comments in here that, as you see here, the plans do not really show where the water and sewer services are. We know where the sewer is at, and showing the water services to the individual lots, as well as the final little connection piece from the, let's go back. And then showing the connection point, how they're getting across from the piece that goes underneath I-90 to the site. That has to be fine-tuned during design.
Okay.
And that's something which our water department, the engineering department, and then the applicant's engineer would work out. What we're trying to do is kind of thread a needle in that area. There are a lot of utilities out there, plus we have a future line in there, and the last thing we want to do is put a new water line in a location that's going to hamper our ability to get the more difficult line, the sewer outfall, into the correct place.
Okay. And while you've got that map up, in some of the details, it said that it's a 375-foot extension,
So
but that's more like 800 feet to go into the highway, right?
there's two different items. So the piece that's going underneath the freeway, that is a requirement of the annexation that was approved for this land.
Okay.
And the reason for that was we did not want them moving forward beyond annexation if there was no way for them to get water safely to the site or reasonably to the site. So they had to put together a conceptual plan with the city that we would be acceptable with. That then had to go to ITD and go through their process to make sure that they would be acceptable with the routing that was chosen. If this routing that's shown here did not work, their other option would have been to look at taking something down McGuire Road from Celtice Way and connecting in on their far west end. That would have been, in my projection, far more expensive than what they're proposing with the undercrossing of I-90. We've reviewed the plans for the water extension underneath I-90. We conditionally approved them subject to ITD's issuance of of an encroachment permit. ITD reviewed everything, they issued that permit, and we have put together with the applicant a construction improvement agreement which would allow for the construction of that water line. The only thing that is stopping that water line from being built at this time is to bring that construction improvement agreement to the City of Post Falls City Council with the appropriate surety to make sure that those improvements are constructed to city standards. And the applicant can probably explain why they haven't done it at this point. Our presumption is that why start a very expensive undercrossing if the subdivision gets denied?
Sure. Would that be entirely developer cost, or is the
Yes,
city
it's
participating in that?
It's entirely developer cost. Several years ago, the manufactured home facility just to the west of here, they extended a water line down the Centennial Trail. That was at their cost. The problem with that water line that was brought along the Centennial Trail is it has sufficient pressure and volumes to give trailers water to drink. There is not sufficient pressure on that line to provide the fire flows that are necessary for the area. By bringing the line underneath I-90, now we have sufficient pressures to provide the fire flows that are required to serve a residential subdivision, as well as help out the trailer park that's out there as well.
ITD, so anything that backs up to state highways or US highways is subject to any additional development requirements or restrictions from ITD. Are there any for this particular development or this site?
So ITD provided a letter to, and that is part of the package. And in that, they made the applicant aware, as well as this body, that ITD has long-range plans to widen I-90.
Sure.
There's been some conceptual plans laid out, however, they were never moved forward, and there wasn't funding to get it through the environmental process to complete. The City of Post Falls requirements, since this is in an area that will be the City of Post Falls, is that when a subdivision backs up to a major roadway, Prairie Avenue, State Highway 41, in this case I-90, we do require that a 6-foot fence be installed along the rights-of-way to improve safety as far as restricting people from leaving the subdivision and going onto the freeway.
Okay.
That's about the only thing we require, and that was the only requirement in this subdivision that staff had put as a recommendation.
Okay.
Along that, oh, I'm sorry. Just gonna-
Go ahead if
Just
you want.
along that same line, so there's no requirement then for like people that are going to buy here, that I know that this might not happen for 10 or 20 years as far as interstate being expanded, but is there anything that would have that people buying here would have to know or be let know that in the future the interstate is going to be widened and it's going to come close to your property?
So right now, I'm not quite sure how that would be handled, other than the fact that ITD, other than in a conceptual basis, does not have a firm plan or an environmental clearance to move forward with widening of the I-90. So if this project was to move forward, and if that gets done prior to I-90 being widened, when ITD has the funding to move forward with that design, they would have to take into account how that property is developed at that time. They also have to go along that corridor as part of the environmental, and they have to take a look at sound mitigation impacts. So in the future, however many years that may be, they would have to look at whether or not a sound wall would or would not be required. And there are federal guidelines on how that's done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. A few more technical questions. They're proposing a 20-foot kind of waiting spot off of the public road to the entrance gates,
Oh, yeah.
so that you don't have people backing up on the public road waiting to get in the gate.
Mhm.
When that's required, is that setback from the property line, or is that from the edge of the right-of-way? You know, like, for the most part, we take a look at it from the edge of the right-of-way. The main driving factor in most cases is that we want to make sure that emergency services, when there's a gate on there, can pull in, get up to the gate, and not be blocking traffic on the main road while they open up the gate to get in. Secondarily, we also take a look and say, what is the projected volume of traffic? What is a reasonable amount of distance needed to handle what's typically going to be there? If you had a high-density neighborhood with a lot more than 55 lots in there, you'd probably want more distance because you'd figure there's going to be someone at the gate and maybe 2 or 3 people waiting. With a 55-lot subdivision, we don't anticipate a high volume being driven, getting in and out of that gate, especially on the west end over at McGuire Road, which is where we anticipate to be the higher use. Okay. In general, when I read through our code, it seems like our code favors public roads. Yes. Generally. But I didn't see anything in our code that says where a private road is more applicable than a public road. Is it just based project by project? Is it anything less than 100 homes? Is it? It's more on a project by project basis. We're going to try to push, because it's generally in the public's best interest to have the public roadways. There are occasions where you will have a private roadway, and if the HOA is not set up appropriately, you get to 20, 30 years down the road, where that roadway starts to fall apart, and then the HOA comes to the city and say, hey, can you take this road back over, maintain it, replace it, et cetera. We have done some code updates to better define when will the city take those roads back over. In a case like this, there's a couple of advantages why we don't want to really see it as a public roadway, and also why we don't want to see it as a cul-de-sac. It's almost a half mile from McGuire Road to the east end. Our normal standard is an 800-foot maximum length for a cul-de-sac. That really starts to require a second access point. Also, the fire code is going to have a 1,000-foot max length before you need a secondary access point, especially if you have more than 30 lots. This has 55. When there's a private road, it's most advantageous to us for them to mark it off and delineate it with a gated access, because that tends to keep people from just using it as a cut through. Looking at this layout, they do have the gates both on the west end and then on the east end. You know, it's about 100 feet back from Lundy Boulevard where they're putting it there. In fact, you can kind of see it. It's not very well marked out, but that's about where the gate is on the east end. Are there, and I forget what the term is. I wrote it down somewhere on my notes here. Are there cutouts or widening spots on this private road for your post office boxes, for loading, unloading, or something along those lines? Because if this is only 24 feet wide, and then you're dropping into a swale on the south side and a swale and a sidewalk on the north side, as part of the design process, they are required to show in the construction plans where the mailboxes go. That has to be coordinated, and we get a response back from the Postal Service and the U.S. Postmaster that they are acceptable with where the post office box or mailboxes go. Okay. And so at that point, this might be modified to have kind of a pullout for a postal vehicle or whatever. That is correct. Okay. So if we voted to approve this subdivision, it's not, what we're seeing right here is not exactly what it would be fine. Yeah, from an engineering standpoint, what engineering is looking at is the sewer properly sized to handle what we anticipate for loads? Are they locating it generally where we want it to be? The same goes for the water. Is it properly sized? Does it provide enough flow, and does it provide enough pressure to meet
fire requirements as well as what the subdivision wants to use. For a roadway, we take a look and say, does it meet the city's minimum standards for a public roadway? If it's a private, does it meet the minimum private street requirements? There are items like they could have, in this case, they don't show the streetlights, but streetlights are required. But if they had streetlights shown on here and they aren't spaced exactly the way we want it, we're looking at, does it generally meet what a subdivision needs? Yes or no? If it doesn't, then that's a reason for denial. But if it meets the general requirements, but we need to move some things around a little bit, tweak it here, tweak it there, that's the technical details that the engineering department works out with the developer.
Okay. Since traffic is going on to Lundy, what does our transportation plan do about traffic on Lundy? How does it address, I know it's not in the city.
So it's not in the city. Lundy Boulevard in the city's large-scale view is a local residential street. Normally at build-out, that would be a 32-foot wide curb face to curb face. That area is developed with larger sized lots. It does not have the developed background of curb, gutter, sidewalk. If that area was to come into the city of Post Falls, we would need to take a look at it in context with how are we providing services to that area in the city of Post Falls. But, first you have to annex that in. We do not anticipate a very large volume of traffic from this subdivision going on to Lundy Boulevard. Might be a better view. I'll utilize this for the total east-west. So if you're living on the proposed roadway, you're most likely, when you're leaving or coming to this subdivision, you're either coming from McGuire Road or you're heading to McGuire Road. And that far east access point, it is available, but most likely the most direct route and the quickest route to get out of that subdivision is to go right to McGuire Road and not to go to Lundy Boulevard and then bend around to get to McGuire. Part of it is there's a little bit of engineering guesstimation and background as far as experience. I take a look at a subdivision like this, 55 lots. You can estimate that there's going to be about 550 trips per day. Standard is 10 trips per day per household. On this, I would be surprised if more than 10% of the trips went down to Lundy Boulevard. But it could be more than that. But that's talking about 55 trips per day onto a residential street of Lundy Boulevard. Lundy Boulevard is not constructed to what the city would consider standards for a local street. It's a chip seal road, and that's one of the reasons why not having the cut-through traffic on this new road, plus having the gates, actually encourages the traffic in this subdivision to go out to McGuire and reduce the amount of traffic going onto Lundy Boulevard.
Okay.
And that was one of the areas that was a slight concern to the Post Falls Highway District as well, was that Lundy Boulevard is not constructed to handle 1,000 trips per day.
When it crosses the Centennial Trail, they're proposing a grade increase, kind of almost like a speed bump to go up to the trail.
Yeah,
kind
speed
of slow
humps,
down traffic.
speed hump, speed table, and that's just to encourage, if you look at,
I think there was a cross-section of it.
yeah. It was in here, but if you take a look at that, with the sharp curve on the north end, that is going to greatly reduce the ability of people to be going really fast on that private roadway. But we're putting the emphasis in that the private roadway is being required per our requirements to go up to the trail level. They would actually be cutting the trail out and rebuilding it in that section to make it stronger to handle traffic. It would be marked as a crosswalk for the multi-use pathway. So the Centennial Trail would have priority, and I think, Roger, we had yield signs on that too, didn't we? Yeah, and we have yield signs on each side of the Centennial Trail so that vehicular traffic is supposed to yield and give right-of-way to pedestrians and bicyclists on the Centennial Trail.
Is there anything like bollards or anything that blocks vehicle traffic from turning onto the Centennial Trail? They're having problems with that along the Prairie Trail now, where people are just mistakenly driving down the Prairie Trail, not knowing it's not a road.
Yeah, that is something that we would work with the Kootenai County as well as the North Idaho Centennial Trail Foundation and the City Parks Department to say what is the best orientation to discourage vehicular traffic as much as possible on the Centennial Trail, but not create an impediment to the people utilizing the Centennial Trail. It is an issue, and how you handle it can vary, and it changes over time too. Seems like you put one item up, people find a way to work their way around it. One of the things that our Parks Department has mentioned is, at least with this property being developed, right now there's a problem, and you can see up in here, there's a lot of people who utilize this area as a off-road vehicle playground.
Sure. Subdivision is gated. There's a fence along the north side between this and the highway. What about on the south side? Is the plan to have all those yards fenced? And what about on the little public or common parking lots? Is that going to be fenced too, so that there's not people driving that way onto the trail?
That would be a question for the applicant. They did not provide that in their narrative that I saw, and the City of Post Falls code does not require fencing on subdivisions unless we view there is a safety issue such as a railroad or I-90 or similar roadway.
I think that's it.
Cool. Any other questions?
Thank you, Rob, for the dissertation.
I had fun. Any other questions for me?
I don't think so, thank you.
Okay.
All right, invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Commission.
Evening.
My name is Roger Glessner with Ace Solutions, 761 Thornton Road here in Post Falls, Idaho, and we represent the owners of this project. Thank you for the staff report and the thorough investigation and information provided. A lot of the things I was actually going to talk about, I think you guys covered. That was pretty in-depth. I appreciate it. I don't know if I want to start out with, do you have any more questions? Or if I should just kind of walk through this. One of the things one of the last things that came up was the whether or not there be a fence, and I believe we have it on here. Right here on the bottom, fencing along I-90 and the Centennial Trail. So along I-90, there'd be a 6-foot obscured site obscured fence that would go along I-90. On the Centennial Trail, we're proposing a lesser fence, but a fence all the way across there. Going back to the access, we have some lots here, some open space lots where we're going to provide some overflow parking, and that would also provide access for the residents within the subdivision to access the Centennial Trail. Along with that public access, we're also going to extend the sidewalk along McGuire Road beyond our property line all the way down to where it meets with the Centennial Trail to further provide some access there for the pedestrians. The same thing is going to happen off of Lundy. We're going to provide a 10-foot wide path that comes up from Lundy, comes up to the Centennial Trail, and then on the north side of the Centennial Trail, we would come through with the sidewalk there. Another question you had was bollards or something within the Centennial Trail. And the people in charge of the Centennial Trail right now, we did talk about that, and they are not in favor of that. Yeah, they said that it imposes a hazard to the people on the trail more than what they view as an issue with people coming through.
Okay.
And as the city stated, there's a lot of unauthorized use on that lot right now. And so this subdivision will help curb some of that. And so, hopefully it'll help keep some of the four-wheelers off of the Centennial Trail and the surrounding area, and help kind of police that area a little bit better. The water service that we're going to add in underneath I-90, that already has been permitted, and the plans are approved. It is permitted through ITD, and we're just waiting to do that to see if the subdivision gets approved. And so that is a reality. I know there was some talk from others that, you'll never get a water line under there. Well, it is permitted, and so it is ready to go. So that is a reality, and we will be able to get that through. Private road, gated on both ends. We do have a speed table designed for the Centennial Trail, and the purpose of that is to keep the Centennial Trail at its current profile, so the bicycles don't have a bump, they can cruise right through, but encourage the traffic going over it to slow down for that speed bump. It will also have signs, the yield signs and crossing signs and all the required signs that go with it. I don't know, the average lot is, it is 70 feet wide, which exceeds the minimum requirement. Also, the average lot is in the 7,000 square foot range, which also exceeds the minimum requirement for the subdivision ordinance. I think that's all I have. If you guys have any other questions, yes.
I got a question. Where's the snow gonna go? When you plow the snow?
Yeah, it'll go into the easement areas on both sides. One side you have a grassy swell, stormwater
How much
swell.
is the easement area then?
Let me see if I can find a depiction of that. I don't know if I have anything here that really shows it. I guess this kind of does. On this side, on one side we have approximately 10 feet for a grassy swell,
Okay.
stormwater treatment area, and the other side we have 6 feet for a landscape strip or a green strip.
Okay.
Yeah, on each side of the road, so that's where it would go.
I just remember a while back, some people were in here and they were talking about all the snow was put into some of these areas and it just turned into a dump. Like the area that you have a long strip of grass there. So yeah, the snow will go on the sides. It's not.
Well, probably no different than anywhere else in the area. Also, we have this long strip here, open space too.
Yeah.
If snow gets real bad, they could pile it in there.
Right.
And it would give an area to accumulate and pile.
I have a question on that space, that long space. What is it? Is that is that going to be grass, or who's maintaining that?
It's going to be grass. It'll be maintained by the homeowners association.
You're going to have an
Yep.
HOA there?
Yep.
Okay.
We will provide some parking, overflow parking area on the wider end of it as shown there, right there.
When you talk about site areas, like average lot size, that's gross lot size.
Correct.
Not net of the easements and the right-of-way. Is there any concern, just from a developer perspective, of, so you sold this person a 7,600 square foot lot, and their lot actually extends into the middle of the street,
Right.
that now they're gonna fill in this drainage swale and improve that, because that's part of my property, you know?
Yeah. And
How do you deal with that? Is that all CC&R based that you
Well, it
clean
is,
that
yeah.
up?
And we do have an exhibit. I don't think it's on here. I think it's in the city's packet, actually, that shows I don't know if, did you have that in there, Anna? That shows a layout of a lot, typical layout.
There was a
know-
really small insert, so it was kind of hard to.
It's probably in that other, in those other documents. I don't think it's in my stuff, but anyway, we do have a proposed layout that shows where you can provide up to 3 vehicle parking stalls. Yeah, and I don't know if I can show you this. Is
It's
what
this
you're looking at?
little-
Yes, it
little
is.
one
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, and that shows a typical about 1,100 square foot home with I can't read it, I think a 500 or 800 square foot garage. Some, the parking area that's I believe it says 21 or 22 feet back of the sidewalk. And that would be on the sidewalk side. The other side of the road doesn't have a sidewalk. There's only sidewalk on one side. And so we show a typical layout, how that would work with that size of a house.
So you've got, I think in my notes, it's 25 feet deep, and it's almost 45 feet wide for the driveway?
Yeah.
So it's a huge parking spot.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to. And I think what we're trying to demonstrate there is we don't have parking on the street.
Okay.
Parking is not allowed on the street. So you could have 3 or so parking vehicles parked in there, several in the garage if you have company or whatever. Plus, we also provide that overflow parking in the open tracks within the subdivision.
Okay. And not that this is required at this point, but is that kind of the proposed size range for the houses? Are they smaller kind of starter homes? Is that what you're
Yes,
forecasting for it? Okay.
correct.
Plus, staff required them to provide an exhibit that they were feasible lots. Not that the lots just met the minimum lot size per our code, but that they are actually buildable. So when discussing it with the applicant, I believe that we wanted to make sure that they could meet off-site parking, you know, and they can meet the setbacks and actually get a structure on there.
Okay.
At that point in time, it's kind of up to the free market. If they can meet our setbacks, they can meet our parking, and they can get a usable house, then, you know, then the free market, then they're open then to build a house, whether it's 600 square feet or 1,100 square feet.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. There was some discussion also with the ITD property and future expansion of the freeway. And in this overview here along McGuire Road, on the north edge of the property, there's quite a bit of ITD property there that isn't sloped yet. And so that, you know, when they widen the road, they'll be able to come back quite a ways before they even get to the property. And this is elevated quite a bit above it at that location, so. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All righty,
All right,
thanks.
thank you.
Public testimony?
Yeah.
All right, wishing to speak, yes. Is it Dennis Hyatt? Come on up. Name and address for the record, and you'll have 4 minutes.
My name's Dennis Hyatt. I'm a resident in the McGuire Estate subdivision, which is just to the south of the bicycle path. And my big concern is the return back to Lundy Boulevard being a gated private road. Number one, it's a private road going on public land. That's kind of a concern to me. But the bigger concern is that doing a subdivision like this, they've maximized what they can get out of their land for the development. And they're running a road back to our existing road because they need a fire exit. And they've stated that it'll be a gated road, but I don't quite understand why they have speed bumps to slow down the traffic, because you're talking about minimal traffic from fire and emergency vehicles. But more so, the mobile home park that sits to the east of that subdivision and east of the road coming back in, they have quite a hill to come up in the wintertime, and there's multiple times they're stuck down there. And they don't get the plows out quick enough for them. They get out in the morning. They're stuck a lot of times. And that's one situation that we have there. The other situation is the school bus comes through the McGuire Estate subdivision, and it won't go down the hill and pick up the students that live in the mobile home park at the end of the road. They all have to walk up the hill, parents bring them up. There's congestion up there during bus route time, in the morning and the evening. I see this as if they want to put that road in there, it should be an open road to where it would make a very convenient trip for a school bus to come down Lundy Boulevard, pick up the students right there at the mobile home park. They could come through the new subdivision, pick up all the students that are in that subdivision. But what's going to end up happening is all the students in the subdivision are going to end up walking to McGuire Road, and you're going to have a school bus stopped on McGuire Road to load up students in the morning, dropping them off in the evening. You'll have the new road going in. You have a bicycle path there. You have Cannon Avenue. They're just 1, 2, 3 in a row. Then you cross the street and you have Riverbend coming in. Real congested. I don't have a complaint about the subdivision at all, but it's really sad if we don't take the time to say, what can we do to help the surrounding area a little bit? And I'm just seeing that road, if they brought it up to the same standard as the rest of the road, it could be there and available for people if they needed it. And that's basically all I have to say, just my thinking that let's help the whole existing area rather than just to build one subdivision.
All right.
Appreciate that. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Joshua James Hemphill, did you want to speak? Or do you want me to read it?
I think everything I have to say is there.
Okay. In opposition, too much traffic. My street is a dead-end street, so you're on West Lundy Boulevard. This is how, myself and the neighbors wanted to stay. This will likely reduce my property value and an appeal of our neighborhood. The city sewer is obviously already above capacity. The smell is terrible. And wishing to speak, yes. In opposition, Naomi Holt. Name and address for the record. You have 4 minutes.
My name's Naomi Holt. My address is 1744 West Lundy Boulevard. I have lived in Post Falls my entire life. I was born here. This is my home. I've seen a lot of change over the years, some of it good, some of it not so good. I have lived on Lundy Boulevard for 9 years now. I have 2 kids that go to the school. My daughter is disabled. She's in a wheelchair. They have to make special accommodations to be able to get the bus down the road. They can't turn it around down there. So they have to pull into our driveway. We have a dirt driveway, so we have a lovely ditch that the bus makes. It takes a lot of extra effort to be able to get the bus where it is, and it has to be less traffic. We were under the impression that that road that's going to be coming out onto Lundy was for emergency purposes only. That it's going to be open to anyone in there to be driving through there. My daughter's bus won't be able to come down our road anymore because of the added traffic. So I'll have to push her in her wheelchair up to the top of the road in the snow, in the cold. She has cerebral palsy, so she can't do it herself. I think that that's way too many homes to be shoving in one area, but, got to make progress. I'd rather have the homes there than apartments. I don't think that it should be gated on either end. If there's going to be a gate, it should only be at that one end. Our road cannot handle the extra traffic. We have so many people down at that trailer park down at the end that just go blasting through there like it's a highway. There's been many times when the cars going up there slide down and they're stuck in my yard. They're blocking my driveway. So with added people in their cars and everything, that's not going to work for this type of road that we have. I feel like the added traffic, if we moved all of that, the bus stop up to McGuire, I don't know if you've driven down McGuire right there, but when you turn off that road that runs down along the freeway, you can't see anything. So I daily almost get T-boned right there because everyone wants to come out so they can see out onto that bridge. And there's tons of people that come down there and then turn down, I think it's a river bend. And it's a daily almost T-bone. I've seen it so many times, and there's kids that walk down there. There's a lot of people that like to ride their bikes down those roads because we've asked them, there's less stops than on the Centennial Trail, so they like to ride down the road. And I just feel like with the added influx of, what did he say, 500 more trips down that road, someone's gonna get hurt. I just hope it's not one of my kids. I hope it's nobody. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, invite the applicant back up. You can speak to some of the concerns, possibly.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. We do understand the community concerns on all these things. It's the same concern that comes up every time there's development. We will work with the city through the improvement plans to do what we can to alleviate any of this, within reason. We are going to be widening McGuire Road just in front of the property. That is a requirement, and we're happy to do that. It is just in front of the property, but it does add an additional lane there. Hopefully that'll help with the school bus loading, unloading, and other things. The speed bump going across the Centennial Trail, that was actually a condition to cross the Centennial Trail to keep the pedestrians on the Centennial Trail safe. And so it's to discourage a lot of the traffic from going that way, as well as to slow it down for the traffic that does go through there. Kind of the same idea of the gates. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, close the hearing out. And we'll look at our subdivision review criteria. See what's that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Before you this evening is Landmark Place, 24-3, the subdivision approval consideration. It has R1 zoning, 11.15 acres, 55 lot proposed subdivision. Criteria number 1, a definite provision has been made for a water supply system that is adequate in terms of quantity and quality for the type of subdivision proposed.
Yes, the City of Post Falls water.
Yeah,
And they
and well,
have
it's,
said it's adequate.
yeah, it's not in place. There's definitely plans in place to get it to where it needs to go.
Right.
In coordination with ITD.
Thank you. Same question for the public sewage system.
Well, the feedback that we
System.
have is that the sewage is adequate there.
Yeah.
That would also be provided through the city? Yes. Number 3, the proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
I would say overall it is. This one's kind of, because part of some of the streets around the area are out of the city. And then this road's gonna be a private one, but they are making improvements to help mitigate any possible. And while you are talking about 55 houses, that is not a ton more traffic. It is more traffic, definitely. Developer seems to be willing to mitigate it however he can, especially with improvements on McGuire.
Well, I think we heard from city engineering too that with the gates, most of that traffic's gonna go right back through that subdivision out to McGuire.
Versus
And
going
not-
down to Lundy.
Not going
Yes.
to Lundy. Most of it's gonna go pushing back to McGuire, so.
If that what is it, Lot 15 is owned by the city, and the city is then granting the easement to the developer for that road. Is there some reason why the city couldn't do almost like a turnaround there at the end for school buses, emergency vehicles, that kind of things, if it's on city property, if that's truly a problem at the end of Lundy?
Yeah, I think it's probably a discussion for another day.
Is it?
Yeah,
I mean, it definitely, something probably could be done, but
I don't think the property is in the possession of the city at this point. So this is part of
yeah.
the development criteria is to look at the plans that are before us and to consider whether or not the proposal is consistent with the plan elements. I mean, we can make suggestions and talk to the applicant about revising it at this point, but given the access issues and that they need the secondary access to that point, it seems to me that would be counterintuitive to close it off.
Yeah.
Not close it off.
Make a cul-de-sac?
No, not make a cul-de-sac either. It's just we have this private road coming across Lot 15, which is,
it'll be an easement,
it'll be an easement on city property.
yes.
Why couldn't we make the approach onto Lundy instead of 24 feet wide? Why couldn't we require that to be 50 feet wide? Enough that a school bus would have more room to turn around there at the end of Lundy.
Well,
Just asking, is that something we could put onto this if we felt it was necessary?
I would,
How would we show it's necessary?
And the cost to do it.
well,
These are all good questions. I'm just
Yeah.
Planning and
thinking
zoning,
out loud.
planning and zoning could find that there is an issue with the consistency with the transportation element of the plan at that point, based on the inadequacy of Lundy to serve the bus population of the students, and say, yes, we want to do that, but we're also going to condition the city's potential future use of that lot to something that isn't currently intended.
Yeah.
I think the better recommendation is to resolve it with the staff and let engineering and everything else come up with that in the future when it comes to the development stage of that, rather than conditioning the subdivision approval, since this is an off-site improvement,
Okay.
right? And it's not technically even in the city limits.
Okay.
And the city doesn't own the property at this point. To condition on that, I think, is too far afield, so I would not recommend it.
Okay.
But I think if staff is listening and everything else, they can certainly be aware of it. And there may be flexibility on that lot in the future. I just don't know what the entire development of that lot is intended for. So, sorry, to circle us back down to the criteria. Generally, I'm getting a sense that it is generally consistent with some adverse testimony as to the size and suitability of Lundy, which is an off-site street from this development.
Correct.
Agreed. Yep.
Okay.
Yes, agreed.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioners. Number 4, the areas of the proposed subdivision which may involve soil or topographical conditions presenting hazards have been identified, and that the proposed uses of these areas are compatible with such conditions.
There were no
None have
hazards
been identified, yeah.
None identified.
Thank you. Number 5, the area proposed for the subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, and the use conforms to the other requirements found in this code.
Yes, it does.
It does.
I would even add to that, the density that they're going after is less than permitted. The way I read the code, you can get, I think it's 6.9 units per acre, and they're going for 5 units per acre.
And it is an R1 zoning, so.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And finally, number 6, the developer has made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs by providing, paying fees, furnishing land, or providing other mitigation measures.
The developer will be paying impact fees
Yep, on the building permits, right?
on the permits, yeah.
Yep.
On the building permits, yep.
Just to add to that too, they do have that agreement in place to put the water line in under the highway. That's going to be a big expense, and that's on the developer.
Mhm.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any other comments before we make a motion one way or the other? I'll just say I appreciate everyone coming out and giving their testimony tonight. And this is just one step in a much larger process. So what we saw tonight, you know, if there's drastic changes, it'll come right back through here again, and there's be more conversations. But definitely still, there's more conversations to be had. You know, if you still have concerns, I know for a fact in past developments, the developer will talk with people, especially in the local area, because at the same time, we're all in the city here. We all want to work together. So,
I
Any other
second that.
any other thoughts, or somebody like to make a motion?
I move to approve Landmark Place subdivision file number SUBD-24-3, finding that it meets the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations, subject to conditions 1 to 9 contained in the staff report, and direct staff to prepare a written reasoned decision.
Okay, we have a motion
Oh, second?
and a second. Roll call, please.
Carrie?
Yes.
Walton?
Yes.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda, administrative and/or staff reports.
None.
None. Any commissioner comments tonight? Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.